there are a lot of Christians who say, "Oh, we should be focused on what Jesus did, period. We should not be even considering spiritual warfare. We should not even be considering the enemy. We should not even be considering the devil, because what Jesus did, it is sufficient." And I can say this, it is actually because of the sufficiency of Christ that we should be engaging in spiritual warfare at a whole other level. Why? Because we have something so valuable that the enemy is going to do whatever he can to deceive us and distract us and derail us from the hope that we have and the finished work of Jesus and shedding his blood on the cross for your sin and my sin and raising from the grave for our justification. It is so important that not only the Apostle Paul, but the Apostle Peter also told us, number one, do not be ignorant of the enemy's devices. Number two, Peter said, be sober and be vigilant, for your adversary, the devil, roams around like a roaring lion, seeking him who he can devour. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. If it didn't matter, if spiritual warfare didn't matter, why do our spiritual forefathers go into depth to help us understand how we are supposed to be victorious? My friends, you and I are called to stand against the devil. Look at what it says right here. It says that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. You and I are called to engage in spiritual warfare, be victorious in it. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we're actually wrestling against. In today's Bible study, we're going to be talking about the 4 levels of spiritual dark forces we are called to engage with, that we're called to wrestle, and that we're called to stand against. In later Bible studies, we're going to get into deeper things such as putting on the full armor of God. What does that look like? We're going to talk about the warfare of prayer, 10 different types of prayer for spiritual warfare. We're going to talk about how to find and fulfill your God-given purpose. There's a handful of different things we're going to cover. The goal for all of this is to help us be equipped to stand against what's going on in the spiritual realm in these days so that we can be victorious. Let's break down what these 4 things are. I'm going to zoom in on my screen over here a little bit so you can see this. The 4 different forces we see, it says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. That's number 1. So you guys, if you're not taking notes, you better grab a pen and pad and start taking notes right now, or grab your phone, because I want to make sure to catch this. You might need to go back and rewatch this. Totally fine. Also, share this with somebody who needs this. Share this with somebody who you know is called into the gifts of the prophetic and intercession, spiritual warfare. This is going to help a lot of people understand the war that we're in and how to fight this battle, okay? So we got principalities. That's number 1. We have powers. We have rulers of the darkness of this age. That's number 3. And then we have spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Now, confession time. Because I am oftentimes very dumb, I don't consider the weight of why all of these things are so explicitly different, why there's so much detail and description about each of these different things. Because I don't know about you, the fact that we have a faith in a God that we can't see, and we're fighting in a spiritual war that we can't see, most of us can't see. Some people have the gift of being able to see in the spirit. Most of us can't see. It is a reality that's happening in the unseen realm around us, but it is more real than what we see happening in the physical realm around us. Very similar to the world outside of the womb for a baby is way more real than the world inside of the womb, meaning there's a whole life to be lived outside of the womb, but that baby, until they're born, they are experiencing the world from a very elementary perspective. Let's just say that they're not able to even breathe on their own or eat on their own. But then there's a time when that individual will be born and be brought into the world, and then boom, now the experience of the world around them makes a lot more sense. Could it be that us stepping into eternity and seeing all things behind the veil that separates the physical realm and the spiritual realm will be a very similar experience? Once we exit this life, we're going to realize that what is going on in the spirit realm around us is way more real and way more consequential than what's happening in the physical realm. Can I get an amen from somebody? Does that make sense? But while we are here, we see in part. And when I look at these scriptures and I read things about principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this age, spiritual hosts of wickedness, can I be honest? For so long, I've read that and I've thought it's all just the same thing. It's all just like a general description of the spiritual enemy that we're supposed to be fighting. But God has been taking me into greater levels of curiosity, greater levels of faith, asking better questions. For so long, I've read that and I've thought it's all just the same thing. It's all just like a general description of the spiritual enemy that we're supposed to be fighting. But God has been taking me into greater levels of curiosity, greater levels of faith, asking better questions. And what I've discovered is as I press in and really understand, why would the author of this letter or any other book in the Bible, why would they use different language to describe these different forces or to describe anything for that matter? If there wasn't some sort of difference between those things. And if there's a difference between those things, then there's probably a different function between those things. And if there's a different function between those things, there's probably a different way for us to stand against each of those different forces. Hey, if you enjoyed this clip and you want to see another one like it, you can click the video over here. And if you want to watch a full episode of the Kap Chatfield Show, you can click this one right here.